The podcast you are about to listen to contains at least one of the following: strong language, disturbing topics, abusive opinions, generally things that aren't appropriate for little kids or overly sensitive people. So, if any of that stuff's going to get your nose out of joint, this is your chance to turn it off. Welcome to I Had to Say It, the podcast where I talk about things that I feel need talking about, and sometimes they're not getting the attention they deserve. And your feelings, they're not under consideration. Hey everybody, so it was pointed out to me today after uploading this really late last night that I had forgotten to do an introduction. What is about to follow is a conversation between myself and Russ from the Infectious Grooves Podcast. Now, I've talked about their show multiple times on my show. I have brought it up a lot of times. Russ is a great guy. We had a great conversation, and I really hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it. So with that being said, here we go.
On the WAV file down there, it looks like I'm really loud, but if I'm fine in your ears, then that should be fine.
Yeah, no, I can hear you just fine. And like I said, the fact that there's no movement on my line doesn't actually concern me because that seems to be the way every time I record through this. So
yeah.
I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over it, and I'll normalize it and balance it all out when I'm doing it in post anyway.
Right on.
Sound so professional. I'll fix it in post.
Yeah. Well, the three things that, to quote the great philosopher Peter Griffin, really grind my gears is, to me, there's three issues right now that are causing me just sitting back in an armchair quarterbacking like what goes on in the world is, first of all, like the basic inability to see where anyone else is coming from at all. Like, if you don't think exactly like me, then you're just wrong. And furthermore, because I see that to a certain extent, I get going, okay, well, if you don't think like me, you're wrong. But what I don't understand is the inability to even try to understand why someone thinks differently, right? Like why they have the point of view that they have. So there's that. And then the other two things I personally want to touch on are two of my favorite words that I've heard on the internet in the past, year. One is slacktivism. Yeah. This thing where there is a huge difference between the activism that actually occurred, say, during the civil rights riots of the 60s. And there is a gargantuan difference between that and sitting in your mom's basement, posting a hashtag on Twitter and calling it activism. Or reposting a meme on Facebook and going, yeah, my side's right. Like, that is not activism. And then the last thing is, and this one I just learned like a month ago, and it's my new favorite word, nontroversy. This thing where we all have to be up in arms about every single thing, every single day. And, for example, and this is just the latest one. My girlfriend and I watch religiously every night. We watch Wheel of Fortune, and then we watch Jeopardy. And we were at a concert on Thursday last week, and then we went to karaoke on Friday, and then we went to a concert on Monday. So she very innocently puts on Twitter, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy are a big part of our lives. Like because of an active social life, we missed the last couple of nights. Can't wait to watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy tonight. Not even 5 minutes later, I hope you're not going to support that fascist Pat Sajak.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I can totally see that happening. Like, let's be bent out of shape over something that has literally no bearing on our day-to-day lives, because I may not like something this guy said as reported by someone else online that probably doesn't like the guy.
Because I don't like a person he stood next to and took a picture with.
Oh, it's see, I'm behind on my controversies, so that's utterly freaking ridiculous.
You're on your own show, but nontroversy, sir.
Sorry, nontroversy.
That is
correct away, because you're right. That is not a controversy. That is dumb.
Yeah. So what Pat Sajak did that is so, and I'm glad I can see you. I know the listeners can't see us, but I'm glad you're sitting for this because I have shocking news regarding Pat Sajak that you may fall out of your chair over this. You see, what he did is he took a picture with Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see, that's worth calling someone a fascist over.
And they didn't request his immediate termination for that? That's just horrible. You can't take a picture with someone like that. She's got opinions that other people don't agree with.
How he's allowed to still host a game show, which has zero to do with politics, is beyond me. Yes, I don't understand.
Yeah, it's utterly horrible. I mean, how dare he tell people to spin a wheel and introduce themselves? That's just completely out of line with taking a picture next to some.
Right. And and the nontroversy is directly related to slacktivism, and they both are related to how we need to communicate better with each other, right? Because as you might imagine, social media had an uproar of I'm never watching Wheel of Fortune ever again. Okay, first of all, you probably didn't watch it in the first place.
I was going to say, they probably haven't watched it since their grandparents passed away, so that's okay.
Second of all, if you do watch it, you're still going to watch it. Like, that's horseshit saying that you're not. And then third, once again, there is a far cry between actual activism and you, quote, not watching Wheel of Fortune ever again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what NBC will do. They'll probably lose tens of viewers over that one. I mean, once you factor in all those things you're saying, like the people who don't watch it to begin with, like honestly, I haven't watched it in quite a while. I used to watch Wheel of Fortune religiously, not for anything other than the fact that actually it was a twofold thing. When I was a little, and it was new. And by the way, that brings me to a whole nother thing after I get this first thought out of my head. Well, when I used to watch it when I was little, I watched it with my grandparents, and because they were snowbirds, and the house we lived in, they lived with us when they came back to Wisconsin, and then the rest of the year they were down in Florida.
Right.
So like 3 months out of the year, I lived with Grandma and Grandpa. Plus, they would come back for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Right. So when we were there, we would do big family dinners, and by today's standards, it's probably kind of weird, but like half of my neighborhood was family. Like, my mom's brother lived 2 houses down the street with his 3 kids, and they were more like my sisters than my cousins, and then everybody else lived within a few miles. So we would do like big family dinners a couple times a week minimum.
Right.
And depending on like whose parents were still working or whatever was going on. And so we would have these big family dinners, and we would all sit down at the table, and on the TV in the living room, Wheel would be on while we were having supper. And it was always a lot of fun. And like, I would guess the puzzle with like half the letters not being in there, and my grandma would tell me I was cheating. I'm like, how am I cheating, Grandma? Explain that. How am I cheating exactly? Because I'm watching the same TV you're watching. This is not a rerun or something. How am I cheating? Right. She'd be like, "Oh, you don't know the answer," and then I'd be right, and she'd just give me like the dirtiest look. Because
I'll tell you what, watching Wheel of Fortune with my girlfriend is absolutely no fun. She's a double major in English studies, so it'll be like a 3 20-letter words. There'll be 2 letters up, and she's like, "Oh, here's what it is," and then she's right. And so I just am like, well, that's no fun.
I can completely see that. See, that was the thing about my grandmother. Was an extremely smart lady. She was, she was a teacher for years and a principal, and very very particular. In she had a very, like I said, she lived with us, half of the year. So very very solid influence on my upbringing. So certain things were just. It was, she was a really bright lady. So the fact that I was beating her to the punch on these things just drove her bananas. And I lived for that because I was a little shit. So I'm like, I did it again. Grandma's mad. And then we like holidays, normal people would have different family stuff. My family played Trivial Pursuit like every holiday.
Yeah.
It got to the point where we had to order the replacement cards every time they came out because we'd gone through the boxes so many times.
All the questions, yeah.
We just knew them. And,
yeah. Well, you looked on social media back then, or she would have made a very vicious meme that got you canceled, or started a hashtag, and it would have been the end of you.
Yeah, Possibly. Well, no, actually, knowing my grandma, no, she wouldn't have. She would have. She would have been right there behind me, going, "This is really how you're going to deal with your problems. You're all idiots, all of you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I have a friend who I would say 90% of his social media output is posting things that are just egregiously twisted out of context. Just reposting with and his addition.
hey, I resent that.
Now, his addition to all these things is "yup" or "you know," and it's like you reposted something that you agree with, and you don't even agree with the real point of it. You agree with the version that's been like wildly twisted to suit your needs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the kings of out of context. I mean, I've had a few things. I'm one of those things I could say where it's like, well, the show's not huge yet, but there are going to be days if the show blows up, I'm going to have to. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that's going to go back and sanitize my content, but I'm going to have to prepare my rebuttals because I've said a lot of things that taken out of context could be really, really bad.
Dude, you know how, I mean, you listen to our show, you know how squeaky clean our show is. You could take tons of stuff we say out of context. You know what I mean? Like it's because if you're looking for something to be mad about, you're going to find it. And that's what, like I said, all these three things that I even wanted to have as a topic, like the lack of communication, the slacktivism, the nontroversies. This is all pushed by people who literally have nothing better to do than be mad, and they want to be mad. They want something to be mad over.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that, and I think it's it's symptomatic of the times because they don't have. I mean, I'm sure you've heard me say it before. They don't have any real friggin' problems.
Right.
They don't have shit that actually to take up their time and their energy to occupy them. So they have to create bullshit so they feel useful and validated because. And it ties into the same thing, the slacktivism, the armchair activism, as I like to call it, where it's like, well, I'm doing all this to help spread knowledge and spread information. It's like, no, you're echo chambering the same bullshit, misinformed memes that you get. And I'll admit, I'm guilty of it sometimes too. But if I put a meme up, I'm trying to do one of three things. I'm trying to start a conversation, or it made me laugh, or I want other people to point at it and go, "This is dumb." Those are the three reactions I'm looking for. I don't care if people agree with me. I just want them to think. And and I've been kind of parsing some of the people that I allow to interact with things anymore because a lot of people that are in like the Facebook group I set up for my show and things like that, they're like local people that before I started everything, my Shauna, my wife, and I were. Like when I set up the page, she invited literally everybody she knew, and she had people on her friends list that were like people she worked with and people that were just acquaintances and friends of friends. And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to get the word out, but I don't know how many of these people are actually going to listen to the show. They just like to come in here and flap their gums. And we had one lady in particular. She was very contrarian, which in and of itself I don't mind. As long as you're coming from a position of, I have original thoughts, I have my own stances, and this is why I believe what I believe. But literally every comment she made, every post she made, every single thing that came out of this woman's keyboard was regurgitating talking points on the news and accusing people of shit without any real basis. Like she was constantly like calling me a Trumper and all this other stuff. And I was like, did you not catch the part of the show that was up during his presidency where I called him the Cheeto every day for fucking 6 months? I didn't like him either. I don't like any of them. Well, granted.
And that's the bummer is that, and this is both sides. I want to be clear. I'm not just going, oh, the left sucks. I know a bunch of people on the left that suck. I do know a bunch of people on the left that suck, but that's not my overall point. My point is that it happens from both sides. You get anybody on the right. If you don't say everything that you agree with, then you're the worst liberal that's ever happened. Like if you even are anywhere near toward the middle, and it's obviously very much the reverse as well. If you don't agree with every single thing that people on the left say, then you are far, far, far right. Pro-Trump fascist, and it's like, nope.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, there's a goddamn middle here. And not to lean too far into my own thing here, but I'm going to go way out on a limb for this, so be prepared. But when I was a kid and I first got into Pink Floyd, when I got into Pink Floyd when I was like 12, okay, and without doing a full history of the band, there's a very huge division in that band. There's before Roger Waters and after Roger Waters, not just within the band, but within the fan base. Okay,
within the community as well. Yeah,
yeah, and even as a kid, I was like, no, I like some stuff they recorded without Roger, and I like a lot of the stuff they recorded with Roger, and literally. People my age and older would be like, no, that's not how this works. You have to be on one side or the other. And I was like, no, I don't. I think you have it wrong. Like I don't
take a side like a good boy.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, I'm not. No, and I know, like I say, I know I went a long way for that, but I see that today in everything. Like you absolutely have to be all in one side or the other. And that's how the world works.
Way too many people that see in black and white terms of absolutes. You're with me or you're my enemy, and it's like, no, I don't get that, because I don't understand the mentality of like, if you don't completely agree with me on every single thing, that means you hate me, so I hate you. That's the other thing. Like, and kind of, I'm in this, where I stand. I'm very centrist in a lot of my views, and I had somebody tell me, well, for somebody who claims to be centrist, it sure seems like you talk a lot of shit about left-wing people. I'm like, well, see, here's the reason. Left-wing people, to my experience, by and wide, they're more active on social media, so I have to deal with more of the blowback from them hearing something they don't like come out of my mouth or out of my posts or whatever.
Right.
But also, they seem to be more married to the idea that if they don't like you or something you say, you must hate them and they must hate you, and there has to be a conflict. Whereas if I say something that pisses right-wing people off, they just go away and ignore me. And
right. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you know how I know I'm pissing them off? Because they don't listen, they don't interact, and they just block me and they're done with it because they don't want to hear my shit.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm okay with that. Because, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You go where the smoke comes where the fire is. And if you poke at me, I'm going to poke back. And other than trolling politicians on Twitter, that's kind of all the activity I've been having the energy for lately is like, I'm not going out looking to start shit, but if somebody wants to say something to me based on them not liking my opinion, I'm going to unload on them, because why not?
Which, by the way, and I know I've talked to you about this, like you've heard me on my own show, and I've talked to you about this, like there's a little in the world that I care about less than politics. The only reason I care about politics is because it seems to be pushed at me in every direction. Having said that, I do have to tell you that your series of do better intern tweets toward Biden's account, like as a person, okay, so the easiest way I can say this is, you probably know this about me too, is that I don't sports at all. I know nothing about any sport. And it's in the same way as if you were doing that toward the Dallas Cowboys account or whatever, I would be laughing too. So this, just so everyone knows, this isn't he's laughing at Biden, so he's the worst ever. But your series of tweets that like, first of all, school them on whatever it is they said, and then it always ends with "do better intern," and I laugh out loud when I read them.
I was thinking about trying to start that as a hashtag, actually, but I probably should, because I'm making a point of putting that on everything, because I got it. I've never gotten a response out of them, and I haven't managed to get blocked yet either, which means I'm not getting anybody's attention from that account.
Right, yeah.
I know a few people that have been blocked by the president's Twitter account, and I think that's hilarious. Yeah. If that happens, I'm putting it on a damn shirt, and Twitter's going to sue me for copyright infringement, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, you have been blocked by this account, and I'm going to put it up in the merch store, and I'm going to get a cease and desist from Twitter, and then I'm going to go, as soon as you tell Elon how many bots you got, I'll take the shirt down. And then they'll sue me anyway. So Like,
There's another one, and you just mentioned his name. Last year when Elon Musk was hosting SNL,
oh yeah,
I've never seen a more. If anybody wants to know what I mean when I say slacktivism, think about the week leading up to Elon Musk hosting SNL. And how every person on Facebook and every person on Twitter was just burning a hole in their phone, typing away about how they're not going to watch SNL and how dare you. And then what happened? Somehow, magically, that turned in the biggest ratings of the season. Now, was it your fascist friends who had it on 4 TVs in their house? Or maybe were you and your friends watching Saturday Night Live, like you said, all week in a fury of Facebook and Twitter posts that you were not going to do?
oh yeah, no, it definitely was, because they had to have material to be mad about, so they had to find things to be upset about before the memes came.
Right.
And I gotta be honest, I haven't given a shit about Saturday Night Live in probably 15, 20 years.
No, me either. But and again, to be clear too, it's not even like I'm not upset that they're saying stuff about SNL. It's because that's one of the instances where you have a clear cut example of you guys spent the whole week saying you were going to do this, and then you not only could you not accomplish not turning on the TV, you couldn't accomplish changing the channel. You know what I mean? Like, but you just posted 100 times on Facebook this week about what a badass you are for not watching SNL this week.
Yeah. Oh, and the thing that really gets me too, I mean, I'll give credit where it's due. Lorne Michaels, he knows what he's doing. There's a reason that show's been on the air for 45, 50 years, however long it's been. And yeah, so he knows that all these people. There's no bad publicity. People saying, "Oh, we're going to protest this," and there's nothing that's going to guarantee your numbers to go up more than a bunch of people that are pissed off you're doing something.
Yep, which is, I think, one of the reasons why he had Chappelle on recently.
Yep, and that's the thing. I mean, the thing about the people that get really bent out of shape, I think, as far as terms of entertainment type stuff goes, people that are like, "Oh, we're going to protest this, we're going to picket that, we're going to not do this, we're going to not do that," but. And it's two things. It's like you said, they wind up watching it anyway, or buying it, or downloading it, or streaming it, or whatever. So, and these companies aren't stupid. They know that controversy sells, and they know that a lot of people, because the people that complain about this stuff, I don't think they realize that they are still the minority. Right. They're the loudest. They make the most noise, but the best way to make noise with a couple of pebbles is to put them in an empty can. Right. They don't have a huge volume of support. They just have a few pedals rattling around in a can, making all kinds of racket.
Yep.
A lot of people are like me. They're fed up with that shit. So now they don't, go out on a podcast and bitch about it every week, but but a lot of people are fed up with it, and they're like, "Oh, really? You think that's horrible? I got to check this out and see what's so bad that you're so bent out of shape." And then they watch and go, "I don't see what the big fucking deal was."
Right. Yeah. And, me, I've always been a very vote with your wallet type of person. A movie comes out, and if I even see a trailer or whatever, and I think, for whatever reason, if I think, I don't think I want to see that, I don't pay them for it. I don't get, if a band that I don't like puts out record, I famously on my show, we always try and say a positive thing about everybody. Except for Creed. Like, Creed is our joke on our show, except for Creed, right? But you know what I've never done? I've never bought a Creed record. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've never...
Yeah, exactly.
I even read this story one time that actually pissed me off in favor of Creed. I read this story about that they had done some show somewhere, and some jackasses were, like, throwing stuff at them and whatever. And all I could think to myself was, you gave Creed money to do that. Like, you bought tickets to a Creed concert. And then, like, if I was Scott Stapp, I would have been standing there like, throw all the shit I don't give a hell. Like,
I got your money.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, I've never bought a Creed record. I've never bought a t-shirt, never bought a concert ticket ever, because I don't like it. But you also don't see, like, you've heard the show. I do it as a comic relief thing. They're kind of the if I need a zinger, I just throw Creed out there, right? But like, I don't sit around on Facebook all the time making up memes about Creed and all that. Like, they just don't matter in my world.
Yeah, and that's important.
And to be clear, before anybody listening to this loses their mind, I want to say two things. Number one, no, I'm not in any way comparing any band, let alone Creed, to civil rights and the very real world issues. And number two, I do understand people getting passionate about especially things like equal rights between races and so on, and far more nuanced discussions like what goes on with trans rights. And I would be an idiot to not understand those things and people getting passionate about them. But my vitriol is squarely aimed at the slacktivism aspect of it. If you like, for example, I have a friend of mine who is very much dedicates much of her life to trans rights, but she's out all the time at events and marches and stuff. And she's not sitting around Facebook posting memes about it. She's actually going out and standing up for what she believes in. And whether I agree with whatever she believes in or not, doing that matters way more to me than sitting around hashtagging stuff all day and then not taking action. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's actually being an activist and doing something respectable and doing something that's worthy of, of being acknowledged. It's not, look at all the memes I shared. Just tell me how great I am.
Right.
I actually, a few years back now, I had an encounter with somebody with that mindset, and that was really before it picked up the momentum that it's gained. It was way before anybody came up with the idea of calling it slacktivism. I can tell you that because it is a relatively new term, and I like it.
Yeah,
but
the more recent one, nontroversies, that's got to be my favorite thing I've heard in months. But go on.
Yeah. But several years ago, I have a cousin of mine who, bless her heart, she's been through some shit, but she does a lot of things I don't agree with. We don't see eye to eye on anything hardly. I mean, she's a good kid. I do.
So you're saying she's not a fan of the show?
I don't know if she's ever listened, to be honest. She's a fan of me. I don't know how much of a fan of the show she is because
right.
I shit on a lot of things that she actually believes. And we've gotten into several discussions like Facebook Messenger and shit because she's back home in Wisconsin and I'm in Illinois. So
right.
But several years ago, she said something on Facebook, and I was at work, and we were like sitting around waiting for we were doing a wedding or something, and we're like waiting to start pulling trays out. So I'm dicking around on my phone waiting for the bride and groom to shut up so we can feed them. And so she posted something on Facebook, and I was just like, I don't even remember what I said, but I said something that, because I was like, that has got to be one of the most short-sighted, poorly thought out, that you must have a liberal arts degree answer I've ever read on anything. And I was just kind of roasting her. And one of her friends felt the need to come run into her defense and starts throwing like all these different memes at me that she somehow thinks is like winning an argument. And I'm like, if you can't present your case without, running to something someone else created to try and validate your argument or your point, you're not really winning the argument. And she just keeps throwing this shit at me. And I was like, it must be nice to sit around and do you have like an entire folder of fucking memes just loaded up for this exact conversation?
Right.
And she's like, I've got hundreds of folders. I can cover everything you got. And I was like, that's not something to be fucking proud of.
No.
That just shows a lack of critical thinking and a lack of rational thought. Well, you have a liberal arts degree, don't you? And she was like, maybe I do. What, you think you're special? Blah, 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 blah. And then she was like, I know who you are. You think you're something hot because you're a chef. And then she's like, you don't even have a degree. I'm like, I do have a degree. So fuck you, fuck your parents, and fuck two people that look just like them. And I was like, and B, if you know me from whatever reason, if you were running around with her when we were kids, I'm probably smarter than you. So how about a little respect, you shit? And she was just like,
I mean, that's lost, isn't it? Any sort of kind of respect. Not to be, well, when I was a kid, but back in my day, we had a thing that we did when I was a kid, and you may have heard of this, Aaron. It's called respect for your elders. We used to do this crazy.
Yeah, I remember that.
We had that, and another thing that we had, and this is going way back, so this might be before your time. We had a thing called experts when I was a kid, and what an expert was. Now, here's the thing: you may have heard of an expert, and you may have heard of it as a person who sits around on social media and reads a bunch of things that they agree with, and therefore, no, experts used to be people who would deeply study any particular topic and know what they were talking about before they opened their mouth. And,
those days.
and we had, well, the thing is, it was a magic combo, the two of them together. Because if you had people respecting their elders, and some of their elders were experts, then it was just a magical time for you to learn things. But it also required, and this is another thing you don't hear anymore these days, is it required the shutting of yourself up to hear other people.
Yeah, that goes back to the whole people actually being able to have conversations when they don't necessarily see eye to eye, and
Right.
people being able to converse instead of just sitting there waiting for their turn to fucking talk.
Right.
And it's like active listening. You have to pay attention to what the other person is saying. And particularly with, the uptick in social media, you have to take into account where they're coming from, how they're looking at things. You can't just go strictly on the words because, social media posts don't have tone and inflection, and you can throw
Right.
emojis in there to like try and show you're being sarcastic or whatever. Like I was looking at one of those posts. It's like your 5 most used emojis are sum you up as a person. And it was like, so I'm just looking at it, just like, what would mine be? And I pull my phone out and I got like the metal fingers,
Yeah.
guy slapping his own face, the middle finger, and a black heart and a face throwing up. I'm like, yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, you're like, it looks like a new t-shirt's on its way.
Yeah, the thought crossed my mind. I was like, I could do that. Someone might actually buy that.
Let me tell you how deep this lack of communication and people not wanting to see where the other one comes from goes with me. We used to, for about 9 years in my house, we used to have people over every Friday night to spin records. And up until 2016 or so, it was always a politics and sports free zone. Like, because I don't care about either of those things. So I was like, if you're coming over to the house to spin records and talk about music and drink and whatever, great. But I don't care to hear at all about any sort of sport or any politics. Well, then in 2016, everything changed and we all had to talk about politics all the time, no matter what, right? So someone who was a close friend of mine at the time, and I should say our friendship didn't end over this particular thing, but at the time was a close, respected friend of mine, and came into my house during one of the music nights and was talking about how all Trump supporters need to die. And not in hyperbole. This was like, this person was suggesting that all Trump supporters should be killed. And I openly broke my own rule. And there were 2 other people there that night that were like, oh, you're breaking your own rule. Like you're going to talk about politics. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so, and I kid you not, this is true. This is not just my recollection. I could hook you up with the 2 other people that were in the room and they would tell you the exact same thing. I suggested that instead of killing every Trump supporter, maybe we try and open a line of dialogue with people who are viewed as Trump supporters, or even people who, whatever, head to toe in MAGA or whatever, and find out what the root cause is for their beliefs and see if we could find somewhere in the middle to meet instead of the option of killing them for having different beliefs or beliefs we view as wrong or whatever. Make a long story short, because this discussion took about an hour. I was seated, speaking as calm as I'm speaking to you the entire time. And by the end of the discussion, the person on the other side of the table, who by all accounts is usually a pretty rational person, was stood up, beat face red, and pounding on the table, telling me how wrong I am for having the nerve to suggest that we could speak to people and find some middle ground. And I literally, the thing that made him grab his beers and records and slam the door and leave was when I said, I've been talking to you as calmly as I can about this the entire time. I haven't moved from my chair. I haven't raised my voice. I'm certainly not smashing my hands down on the table. Between the two of us, I think I may have uncovered the problem with the lack of communication. Like, I think I might have figured out who is problematic in this, and that's what made them forfeit the conversation and just leave all mad. And of course, this was followed the following day by a huge amount of what we talked about before, meme sharing and story sharing. And, this is for people who think there's some middle ground from Trump supporters, and it's some wildly skewed story about someone who did something awful and happened to be wearing a MAGA hat or whatever while they were doing it, and then that was followed almost a week later by a big, long personal Facebook message apologizing for their behavior and asking if they could come back to my house. And it's like, but you made sure to spend a day telling anybody who will listen on the internet, and when you post that story, you're going to get a bunch of yeah in the comments, right on, and that's what you post it for. You don't post it because that's what you believe. You post it so you can get a bunch of fake hugs from the internet via likes and comments. But
to get the dopamine fix.
Yeah. And that's mind blowing to me. Like, I can see it as clear as day happening in my head. And when I think about that, it's like, I literally, all I did was suggest that, maybe talk to a racist person or anyist person and go, hey, where's this come from? Like, what did you learn that from? Like, what is your main issue with that race or orientation or whatever? And I'm not saying that both of you are going to walk away from the conversation every time going, oh, well, I understand you now, let's all sing Rainbow Connection together. But like, there's probably going to be some middle ground. Maybe they've been through something that you would view as horrific, and that's why they have that worldview now. Or they could be, died in the world, just that's how they were brought up, and there's going to be no changing their mind. Well, at least you know that now. You know what I mean? Like, I do not understand the not just inability to communicate, but the open pushing against the idea of even communicating. I just don't get it.
Well, yeah, it's an actual active resistance. It's one of those things too, where it's like, I'm a huge First Amendment supporter. People should be able to say whatever they want. Now,
right.
That doesn't mean you are free of consequence for what you say, which is where I lose a lot of people because,
right.
I mean, I take it pretty seriously when the standard I hold myself to is, I'm going to say whatever I want to say, but I am more than prepared to deal with the blowback. And
right.
I understand that I can say things that will piss people off. I can understand that I have opinions people are not going to agree with. I'm still allowed to hold those opinions, and I have to be prepared for the consequences of, I may lose people over that. I may lose followers. I have made some posts on Twitter as a prime example where I lost followers, and the thing is, I'm always picking them up and losing them, so I can't really keep track. The number fluctuates, but
right.
I'm hovering after I tried to do a purge, but I got tired because it was a lot of accounts to go through just to try and get rid of all the fake ones, all the bots and all the anything where the entire profile is in Korean. I'm sorry. You got kicked out of my followers list because I don't believe you're a real person. You have no posts. Everything's in Korean and your account's a month old.
Right.
You're gone. But I've came to realize through interacting with a few other posts, like, oh, wow, this person blocked me. I must have really got under their skin. I wonder which comment it was, which argument it was. And without going into too many things that, piss me off, a lot of it comes back down to the whole, I don't agree with you, but I still think you can have your opinion, and they can't reciprocate. It's since
right.
I don't agree with them, I must be silenced and told I'm a horrible piece of shit, and they just can't deal with me. We may agree on 99 things, but that one thing we don't agree on is enough for them to go, you know what? I can't deal with you.
Right.
And it's like, it's just a weakness of character as far as I'm concerned, because, going back to my grandma that loved Wheel of Fortune that I mentioned earlier, that was one of those things. She was very much like, if you don't like someone, if you don't agree with someone, you don't have to like that person, but that doesn't mean you get to just cut them out and make sure that nobody else wants to talk. I'm like, don't ever let me find out you're the reason some other kid's miserable because you're trying to turn everybody against them.
Right.
And that was just part of how we were raised. I mean, you could have difference of opinions. You could not agree on something and still exist in the same space. And the other backside of that, which is more a personal thing, a stance I have developed over the years of being a jaded, cynical bastard, and I lay a lot of that on my career in food service because you have to be a special kind of fucked up to want to do what I do. I mean, not so much now because I got a desk job now, and it's corporate gigs rock.
Yeah,
I love the idea that I might be getting sent to a couple of accounts, and I get to fly business class and stay in a nice hotel. So,
I've never done food service, but I have about 20 years of retail experience under my belt. And you just, even when the last, I don't know, decade that I was in retail, I classified myself as retail adjacent because I worked with I worked for a high-end electronics company that sold a lot of their goods through like the major retailers, Best Buy and so on. So what I did was a lot of dealing with the staff in the stores, not customer facing, right? So even then, you just stand there and look at how some human beings treat other human beings, and I think about when I see that, I think about how I see a person treating another human being like absolute garbage in a service setting. And I think when you go home, first thing you're going to do is sit on your couch and post a whole bunch of memes about how we all need to be better to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But when you had the chance to be better to someone in public, you didn't do it because your Facebook friends weren't looking.
Yeah, it's very performative. It's not the genuineness of it just isn't there anymore. I mean, it used to be you did something good because it was the right thing to do, and now everybody's like, hey, make sure you get a good shot of me giving this homeless guy $1.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and you did an episode not long ago. Well, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think, about like doing things for people, not doing things for people to get the attaboy or thanks or you're such a great person or whatever. And I mean that feels nice when people acknowledge that you did something, but like anybody who's doing something nice for somebody else, for someone else to see it, is not doing something nice.
Yeah, no, it's very much I'm doing this so everyone can see how generous and kind I am. No, you're doing it because you want everyone to think you're generous and kind because you're probably morally bereft or lacking in character. I throw that one around a lot, morally bereft. I'm fucking morally bereft because, well, actually, no, I've refined it. I prefer the term morally flexible.
Morally challenged.
Yeah, it's more like, I have a code and a set of standards, but there's always going to be that wiggle room. Like if it came down to it, I am going to prioritize people I know and care about over random ass stranger every time because I'm honest enough to admit that's where my priority lies. Me, right. My family, because if I'm not okay, I can't take care of my family. And then I'll worry about friends, neighbors, assorted loved ones. And then if I got anything left over to give, then I'll start worrying about the strangers because anything else would be disingenuous. And like I said, I feel like it's performative. It's a show. It's an act. And I don't do those things.
It always goes back to like when I was a kid in the 80s and seeing like anytime I saw a celebrity holding a victim of famine or whatever.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. You're like,
for just the price of a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You can buy a lot more coffee than me. How about instead of making a commercial, you deliver them some rice?
Yeah, it's just amazing to me the amount of showboating that goes on with that respect. And actually, being from Detroit, it's there's two artists, recent artists, who are very big and do a whole lot of work for Detroit behind the scenes, and both of them try very hard to make sure nobody ever finds out what they're doing. Because it's and I've heard that too of. Like Michael Jackson and Prince. I've heard Prince did so much stuff for people while he was alive and never wanted anybody to find out about it. And it's like, you didn't see photo ops of Prince, standing next to starving children or building a school in some third world country or whatever else, because that's not what he was doing it for. He wasn't doing it for the photo op of it,
Yeah, no, he was doing it because he was a decent human being, which is so nice to find. and finding out Prince was awesome just made me that much happier too. So when I started learning that stuff, I was just like, yeah, that tracks. And every now and then I'll get somebody who's on some Prince hate, and I'm like, look, shut your mouth, know your role. Prince was amazing. He was a prolific artist. He was an extremely talented musician, and he was a really decent guy. And if he wasn't dead, he'd probably be nailing your girlfriend if he felt like it. So shut up.
I feel like when I grew up, that was most of the hate directed toward Prince was more jealous guys than anything. It's like,
oh yeah,
that guy's better looking than your girlfriend is, and he could still nail your girlfriend.
Exactly. It's like, wait a minute, he slept with who? All of the women. That's who Prince slept with. Prince looks at people and they get pregnant. That's just how amazing he is. Just accept it.
That's funny that you say that. I'm shooting a video this weekend for our YouTube channel of 5 hidden gems from Prince, like 5 songs most people don't know of. And one of them is this beautiful ballad called Damn You. And the first line of the song is "Damn you, you're so fine," because it's a Prince ballad. And one of my great music night memories was because it's the first song on like the 4th side if you play that album on vinyl, right? And we had, I don't know, 20 people. The story's at least 10 years old, but we had like 20 people in the house, and I flipped the record and dropped the needle, and then that song started. And before the lyric even started, my friend was all the way across the basement. He goes, "Oh, somebody's going to get pregnant."
Yep.
Plan, yeah.
Actually, I can't think off the top of my head who it was. I was having a Prince conversation with somebody the other day, not an actual physical conversation, but an online back and forth where he's like, right. I just don't see the appeal and blah, 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 blah. And I want, he was like, I pretty much all he could reference was like the Batman soundtrack and Purple Rain. That's all he kept bringing up. And I'm like, all right, here's a list of cuts I want you to listen to. And then just to make myself laugh, I started off with Erotic City just because I wanted him to.
Yeah. What a jam that is, though.
Dude, it's a jam. But if you actually listen to the lyrics, it's like, wow, this is filthy. And now I love it. So I'm like, it's a great song. It's a great jam. And I giggle because in some ways, mentally, I'm still a 12-year-old. So I'm like, it's funny. He's talking dirty.
So there, I don't know how well versed you are in Prince overall, but there's a song that was the lead single off of Diamonds and Pearls, and the song's called "Get Off."
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the version that gets played on the radio is filthy, like even censored. It's still that. Yeah, and there's a rap in the middle of the song that is filthy as hell. So if you get the CD single for "Get Off," there's a quote dirty version that's a minute. It's a minute longer, and it's the exact same song that you're used to, except the rap in the middle goes into detail about what he's going to do.
Oh Lord!
And I remember hearing that, Diamonds and Pearls when it came out when I was, I think, 15 or so, and I remember hearing that CD single version and just being like, oh no, like having that I'm in trouble feeling.
Yeah, like someone knows I listen to this.
Yeah. But Prince, what you said about he's got, first of all, the Batman soundtrack is righteous, first of all.
I'm not saying it's a bad soundtrack. I'm just saying that was all he could reference.
Right. Well, and then outside of like country and like hardcore, like gangster rap, if you like any genre, Prince made it.
Oh yeah.
I mean the R&B, rock, ballads for both, rock ballads, R&B ballads. He did some material that could be described as alternative rock. The dude in 2000 or 2001 put out an entire jazz record that is fantastic. I mean, while he was alive, he released, I want to say it's 42 studio albums between 78 and 2016 when he passed, 2015, 2016.
Feels right. I want to say his last studio album came out in 2016.
Yeah.
See, and again, I only feel confident saying that because I was just looking at this for the argument I was having a couple weeks ago. So it's like, it's relatively fresh in my head.
Well, he put out 2 records the year before he died and 2 records the year he died. Yeah. But my point was not how much he's put out. It's that there's so much there. Like whatever type of music you like, I guarantee you, Prince, unless you are a stone cold, and by country and Western, I mean like Merle Haggard, George Jones, like country and country, right? Unless you like Live and Die by Johnny Cash, Prince made music that you like.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
And it wasn't forced. None of it was forced. There were, I get crap from Michael Jackson fans because Dangerous is one of my least favorite Michael Jackson records. And that's because he just completely followed the New Jack Swing sound on that record. And I want to hear Michael Jackson innovate. I don't want to hear him doing a sound that's hot. Right. And, but Prince, outside of like Diamonds and Pearls in the record after it, he did, he was a little rap heavy in a lot of his songs because rap was hot at the time. But outside of that, I don't think anything he ever did was, I think Prince recorded what the hell he was. Like, let me put it this way. Who else would release a jazz record in the year 2000? It's 2000, 2001, somewhere around there. That's entirely about being a Jehovah's Witness if they give a remote crap what anyone thinks.
Yeah. That's only Prince could do that. That's unapologetically Prince. That is.
Yep.
And
Smith talked about one time, but Prince had him come and shoot an entire documentary about the recording of that record, and it never got put out. Like so much stuff Prince did. He recorded so much stuff visually and audio that we still have yet to hear. And Kevin Smith said the whole time he was on set, Prince just wanted to talk to him about being a Jehovah's Witness, and Kevin Smith was like, "Can I just shoot the film though?" And Prince was like, "But I really want to talk to you about being a Jehovah's Witness."
Like, yeah, I want you to know where I stand on this.
Yeah, Kevin Smith was like, "I got it. I'm shooting a film about you doing this record. I got it."
Yeah, to be a fly on that wall would have been very entertaining, I'm sure.
I can't even imagine. But yeah, I know this is a really roundabout way of getting into it, but even look at, again, this is another music example. In the 90s, I was the only person I knew that looked into why Prince changed his name. Like when everybody else was making fun of, oh, can you believe he put that on his face and he changed his name? If you look back on it now, there are whole ass music laws that exist because of ways Prince found around the system. One of which is it doesn't matter what you call yourself anymore. You can't get out of your record contract. He did that to screw over Warner Brothers and got out of it. And not only that, he put his money where his mouth was. As soon as the dust cleared and he got free, the first thing he did was put out a triple album. Each CD of the set was 1 hour on the nose. Like because his whole bitch with Warner Brothers was they were mad that he was putting out too much music. And he was like, well, I'm an artist. So he found a way to get out of his record contract. But in the 90s, though, everybody I know was just making fun of him. Without you watch at the time Inside Edition or Entertainment Tonight or whatever, our social media of that time, and they would, they were making fun of Prince, because he changed his name, and that would be the end of the story. And I was like, no, there's more to it than that. There's a reason behind this,
Why did he change his name? I remember they never really got into any, meat and potatoes. They're just like, here, he changed his name into an unpronounceable symbol. He will now be known as the artist formerly known as Prince. Now just the artist. Now symbol. I was like, dude, there's got to be. He didn't do that for no reason. I mean,
there was, and I could go on. He was the first artist to give away. He gave away his album with he had an album called Planet Earth that he gave away at Target, and in the UK it came with the Sunday paper. Literally, if you subscribe to the Sunday paper, and they changed the rules for how album sales were counted. Because he knew he wasn't going to get anything promoted. So he was like, well, I'll just do it. I'll go around. I'll pass the record out this way, and then when they changed that rule, the following tour, if you bought a ticket, you got the album for free. So 20,000 units moved per city, right? That all he's got to do is do it, right? They changed that rule after he did it, So this is a guy who was mostly known in the media and in judgmental circles as a quote weird guy, but he wasn't a weird guy. He was just a dude who was doing things different than anyone else.
Yeah, and he was ahead of the curve in a lot of ways.
In so many ways. There's so many artists who now do things the way he was doing it, and it's normal now, but it was weird then. And again, I know, like with the Pink Floyd thing, I know this is out there a little bit to make the correlation, but I would argue that it's the same thing. It's like the thing you don't understand, you immediately make fun of or say is weird, or, there's got to be something wrong with it. When if you just did a little bit of research, you would find out that like, oh, this is actually something that can help me,
Yep, definitely. I say, and in terms of Pink Floyd, I gotta say something kind of controversial myself, and you can judge me for this one all you want, but there's a couple tracks on the Division Bell I don't hate. So.
Oh no, I like Division Bell a great deal. And you will probably have to cut me off because once I get going on Floyd, it's a whole thing. But my problem with the first record they did without Roger, Momentary Lapse of Reason, is the album sounds like they sat down and were like, what would Roger do? Like, let's try and make an album that sounds like what Roger would say. Whereas the Division Bell is them going, well, I don't know, we're Pink Floyd now. What album would we make?
Yeah, and honestly, I respected that a lot more than trying to. Let's keep kicking this can along.
Yeah, but by a country mile. The only time I ever got to see Pink Floyd in concert, like the brand name Pink Floyd, was on the Division Bell tour. I saw them 2 nights in a row. They were absolutely fantastic. But that album, the first album they did without Roger, is just so forced. It's like, what would Roger do? Oh, I don't know. He'd probably complain about human rights and probably complain about war. So here's all these forced lyrics about war and human rights on this record. And then what's funny is the record after the Division Bell, most of it is them complaining about Roger, but I don't care because it comes from a real place. Like that's what was important to those guys,
and it's organic. It flows naturally. And that actually kind of ties into everything else. It carries more weight. It's not something you're doing just to make a certain look or a certain flex. That's organic conversation. Yes, we're pissed off at Roger and we're going to make a whole album about it. And that was natural and organic and a much better album.
Yeah. I like Momentary Lapse of Reason. The first one without Roger ranks, if it's not my least favorite Floyd record, it's 14 or 15. Like it's way down there.
As I say, it's got to be at the bottom of the list. It was
Division Bell is, some days it's in my top 5. It's a fantastic record, but again, it's the realness of it, the organic nature of it is what matters to me, and that's, again, this ties into everything that we're talking about. Like I care about the people who post their real thoughts and opinions on Facebook and not what somebody else told them or, a twisted article that they think justifies their point of view or whatever, like I would much rather somebody tell me what they're thinking, what they are thinking. And we can have a conversation about that afterwards instead of what you said, the meme machine. I'm going to have my argument with you. I'm going to just keep posting memes. You are adding less than nothing to this earth doing that.
Yep. I mean, and it hits differently too. That's something we lost somewhere along the way. People forgot that genuine doesn't feel the same as this other crap. I think that's one of the things about, this little show that I do and my general demeanor that actually appeals to people is, like me or not, what you're getting is authentic. And I always say I'm more than willing to talk to you if you don't agree with me. I'm not going to shut you out or shut you down. I mean, I might shut somebody down, but it's not going to be like just no, la, 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 I can't hear you. It's going to be like, here is my case as to why I don't agree with you. And unless you find a way to refute this that actually involves facts, logics, and reason, you're wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And and I will treat people with respect until they give me a reason not to. So that's one of those things I never understand when people like, oh, I don't agree with you, so I have to start getting all personal with you, and I have to start saying things about the quality of your character, yada yada yada, because you don't agree with me about this, so you must be a horrible just waste of flesh and da 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 da. And I'm like, that just and again, this, like I said, it might go back to my jaded and cynical approach towards life and all the years of working in a mental frying pan as well as a real frying pan, where it's like, if that's your approach to things, and this breaks people's brains when I try and explain it to them when they do this kind of crap to me, I don't care what you think at that point.
Right.
I no longer value your opinion. It no longer holds any weight to me. So think whatever you want. You're not important enough for me to give a shit.
Yeah. You know what? One of my favorite moments in argument, I don't even want to use the word argument, but like in heavy disagreements, we'll say, one of my favorite moments is when I genuinely get to say, huh, I didn't know that. Or like, oh, okay, well, geez, apparently I need to look into this more. Like I like that when I learn something, or when someone does present a counterpoint that, oh, okay, well, maybe I need to read into this more. And I feel like nobody wants that now.
Yeah, everybody's more worried about being right than they are about being accurate,
or perceived as right. Even
exactly. Perceived as
they're
right.
wrong. Even if they're wrong, they're like, well, I got all the likes out of it on social media, so I'm good.
Look at the ratio. Everybody likes me. Yeah, you're still a fucking moron. But
well, I'll tell you, man, I've told you this many times in private. I've mentioned it on my own show. This is why I love what you do on your show, because, and I think I've actually mentioned this on my own show. I don't just sit around listening to your podcast every week going, yep, that's right. I have done that. I have been in and out loud said, yep, but I don't do that with everything that you say. But I listen, like I listen to what you have to say. And I don't think that, I think we're well past people listening at all. I think we're to the point where people just, it's like some sort of badge of honor. If you don't, like I say, like my friend literally pounding his hands on the table, telling me how wrong I am for having the nerve to suggest that we listen to someone else,
Yeah. I mean, that's, there's so many people that, like you said, it's almost like a badge of honor. They're so proud of the fact that they're not open-minded at all.
Right.
It's like, I am staunchly, I firmly believe this, and I refuse to have my opinion swayed by anything as inconvenient as facts. I refuse to let someone else have a different opinion because that shows my stance is weak or something. I'm like I said, I'm kind of shot in the dark with this stuff because I don't understand that mentality. I've never had that mentality. I like the idea that I can still grow and learn and become better.
Yeah.
Because if this is the best I'm going to get, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. But like I told you, I hand to God, it's one of my favorite moments in any sort of debate, even especially, when I consider myself pretty knowledgeable about music. And if I'm having a discussion with somebody and they say this, that, or the other thing about an artist or an album or whatever, and I go, oh, really? I didn't know that. Like, I love that moment, and then, and I don't go barreling to the internet to be like, oh, no, hold on, let me prove them wrong. Like, I go to the internet to be like, how did I not know that? You know what I mean? Like, and then I look it up and see, whatever it is that they're talking about. And across all things, like, even, and again, politically, because I don't know anything about politics, somebody says, oh, well, did you know this, that, or the other thing? 9 times out of 10, I'm like, oh, well, apparently I need to do more research into that because I don't know. And I feel like even when I say that to people, they look like, what? Why would you do that? It's like,
you mean you're going to actually just not take my word for it, but take it into consideration? That's no, you have to just agree with me instantly, unquestioningly.
Yeah. And, I don't want to run too long on your show, but there is one other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is probably a big subject, but there was another instance that still just hangs with me here. I had a friend of mine, I want to say about a year and a half or 2 years ago, complaining in a group message that they had called someone to do some work on their home, and the person showed up wearing a MAGA shirt. And this was just a flurry of, I'm going to kick this person out of my house and blah, 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 blah. And the person had recently been married, and I know for a fact had several $1,000s given to them by a friend's parent as a wedding present. And it's well known that the person who gave them the money voted for Trump. And this of course comes up at family holidays and all this stuff. So that's how everyone knows.
Oh, yeah.
So in this group chat, and again, this goes back to what you said about how your inflection, with just text can't come across. But I said, how is the best person that's equipped to do that job at your house any different from you taking the money from X person for the wedding? Like, here's a guy just wearing a Trump shirt. Who even knows where he got it from? Maybe he's not, you know what I mean? Who knows? Who knows where he got the shirt from? He's probably smart if he's wearing it, but whatever.
Well, and if he's there as a contractor, maybe he doesn't care if it gets fucked up.
Yeah. There you go. But we know for a fact the other guy voted for Trump, and you had no problem taking thousands of dollars from him. It ended up in someone leaving the group chat because I had the nerve to suggest that this was, common sense. And I did have that friend about a week later came to me and was like, God, I never even thought about that. And I was like, well, I haven't been judging you or anything. I haven't been sitting back being like, oh, I can't believe they took that money from that guy. But if you're going to go on and make this big grandstanding, I'm going to kick this Trump supporter out of my house, then how much stuff in your house was bought with the thousands of dollars from the Trump guy, Yeah.
Well, that's different though. That's
that's money directly coming in to me. So that's okay. And it's just not okay. That's what I say about, same person. This will not come as a shock to you. Posts a lot of memes on Facebook and goes on and on and on about, this right and that right and so on and so forth. And it's like, well, yeah, but, you also took a bunch of money from a person who is a well-known voter of Trump.
Yep. You're right. That comes as literally no surprise.
Yeah.
I get it.
To me, here's the thing. When I was a kid, there was a very common saying that you don't talk about politics or religion at parties, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
To me, social media had the chance of being the biggest party in the world where we all come together to talk about things that we like and we don't. And we, same thing. It's a big party, right? So we're not going to talk about politics or religion. And that's all anybody wants to talk about on social media is politics and or religion.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, that's a really great analogy, and I'm not to be immodest. I'm surprised I didn't think of that sooner. No, that's a great way of putting it, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, we're pretty close to the same age, and we had a pretty similar time coming up. It seems like, and yeah, that was at parties and functions like that. Certain things you just didn't bring up because it was divisive and it was going to cause unpleasantness, and like I said, I mean, up to a certain point with my family, like I said, we don't do certain things, and one of the things we don't do is we don't poke the bear when Aaron's around this, because I will occasionally throw that decorum out the window if I hear something egregiously stupid.
Well, I would argue that social media, one of the many things that it does is throw those rules out, right? Where people used to just know you don't bring up religion and politics at a party, right? But now there's no common sense with that stuff. So people feel like when they're in a regular social setting that they can just go off as if they're, and I'm surprised we haven't heard more stories of people just getting knocked the fuck out for, saying some stuff in real life that they think they're going to hear a bell and a light's going to go off, but really it's going to be their lights getting knocked out,
Ooh, Tweety Bird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's actually just what I was about to say is we're dealing with a whole generation that doesn't understand what it's like to get punched in the fucking mouth for something.
Yep.
And And it's been a long time since I got hit in the mouth for something, but I'm not going to say it's never happened. I mean, I've had a couple of people try to clean my clocks over certain things that I've said. And if I'm being fair, a couple of them were pretty warranted in hindsight. I mean, looking back, maybe I could have phrased certain things a little bit better. And
oh, for sure.
yeah.
And like you said, we're both of a certain age. I'm not sitting here saying like I've had all of these answers my whole life. Like, oh no. I've said and done some real dumb stuff, but it's, for me, it's all been part of the learning process. And again, I think that's key, the learning process. Like, I think just so many people are so proud to be ignorant. And one more time for the cheap seats, when I say ignorant, I don't mean because you disagree with me on anything, you're ignorant. I mean someone who openly doesn't want to learn the full scope of something before speaking on it. That's ignorance.
Yeah, well, that's I'll go one deeper on that. That's actually willful ignorance, because we live in a time where literally everything you could possibly want to know is at your fingertips.
Right.
The vast majority of us, the brokest people on this planet, with the exceptions of like third world countries, are walking around with a smartphone in their pocket.
Yep.
I've seen homeless guys that take Square, I mean, they're digital payments for panhandling, and that's where we're at in the world. There's literally no reason you can't educate yourself, but people are actively choosing not to.
Yeah.
And the ones that, and some of the guiltiest parties are the ones that say, I do my own research. Like, no, motherfucker, you find things that back up your stance and you quote them regardless of their validity.
Right. And today, no matter what side you fall on, there is a news organization who agrees with you and says nothing but what you agree with, right? So if that is your source, if that's your quote research, then we have a problem. Like it's stunning to me how much people don't want to. Like I said, I mean, for me, the whole thing can be encapsulated by sitting in, a person is screaming at me in my own home for having the nerve to suggest that we speak to people and find out what their point of view is.
How dare you suggest trying to understand people instead of just judging them?
Yeah. And
bad, Russ. Bad.
You touched on it earlier, the freedom of speech thing. I got in real hot water about a year ago from somebody I'm very close with, because they were buried in their phone reading something that they already know they agree with. And they said, can you believe X person said this statement? And it was something racist or whatever. And my comment was, and I didn't say it flippantly, I said it the way I'm going to say it to you right now. I said, that they're allowed to say that, right? Like that, right? That they're allowed to say whatever they want. Like, they're allowed to believe what they want, and they're allowed to say what they want. That, right? And that did not go well for me at all.
Oh no! You're not allowed to point that out. No, we must cancel them and shut them down, and they're bad people.
If I can cancel that, I almost got canceled just for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back in the old days when you canceled somebody by knocking them out and leaving them in an alley somewhere, and they wound up on a milk carton. That's how you cancel somebody. God damn it.
Yeah.
But no, it's almost a lost art at this point of being able to process these things, and it's like, it shouldn't be. This is like fundamental 101 things this country was founded on, like being able to say what you want and then bearing the consequences of your statements.
Right. And I think what you touched on earlier, because of how much communication happens through the written word now, the text messages, online stories, social media, so on and so forth. Nuance. You talk about a lost art. Nuance. No one even understands the idea of there being nuance to situations, or why something was said, or why a person has a belief, and it's just stunning to me, the lack of understanding.
Nuance, subtlety, and context, 3 dead concepts that really need to make a comeback.
And I assume you understand now, having listened to my show a lot and the conversation we're having now, the full breadth of my ability to restrain myself. And, on my show, we have like the most positive conversations that we have. And I know it's a running joke, but there is some wild stuff said on my show that is not based in fact at all. And again, like I'm trying to, even my son listens to my show. I'm trying to set an example of, you just don't go, oh, you're stupid for saying that. You have fun with it. You have a discussion. I get educated. My co-hosts get educated. Like you seek to understand where the other person's coming from. Now, from listening to my show, there's been more than a few times where I go, what, I don't, what, how do what but it's as exasperated as I'm asking that question. It's a genuine question. Explain to me why did you say that? Why do you think that? Why do you feel that way about this song or artist or whatever? It's a genuine question.
And based on what I've heard, it's usually a legitimate question. Because I'm pretty sure I got a good frame of reference for what a lot of that's about.
Yeah.
As long as we're talking about hashtags and misinformation. I don't know where this whole Michelle is awesome thing came from. No.
I know you talk about fake news. Every single time that someone uses that and I read it in our feedback section, I always make sure to mention that our show is not, we do not stand behind the hashtag Michelle is awesome.
I mean, I was okay with Michelle is great because, I always got a chuckle. So I'm not anti-Michelle by any means. I think that awesome might be a bit of a stretch.
I'll tell you what, I lived with Michelle for, 5 or 6 years, and I got close to being anti-Michelle by the time it was.
That's entirely different. I'm sure if you had to live with me for 5 or 6 years, you'd probably be like, dude, I'm going to bury this guy under the pool.
Right.
I'm really surprised my wife hasn't killed me in my sleep yet. Because I'm realistic. I know that's the only time she can take me because I'm like 3 of her. So there's no real chance. I told her, I was like, if you're not careful, I'm going to roll over on top of you and just tell the cops I was unconscious.
My solid. My pro tip for you would be keep an eye on how many Netflix documentaries she watches, because if she watches too many about how to get away with murder, then you're probably in trouble.
I kid about it a lot, but she is a true crime person. We have what is it? Discovery Plus. They have like an entire sub channel dedicated to that stuff.
Yep.
And the way she watches it is what scares me, because she watches it like right there. That's why that bitch got caught.
Yep.
And she's like calling her shot before the show's over.
Yep.
And I'm just looking at her going, they would never catch you, would they? And she's like, if I was really worried about it, I'd just unplug your CPAP while you're sleeping. I'm like,
so you have put thought into this. Great. Yeah, this has been great for me because, like, as I said earlier, and this because you've heard my show, I'm very reserved on my show, or I try to be very reserved on my show. And not that I wanted to come on here and unload and scream and yell, but I have a lot of things that like you said, because of social media, you can't post it because you'll get people who either in earnest misunderstand you, or on purpose, like you said, are willfully ignorant and are going to take what you said out of context. So I just shut up about a lot of things. So I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I'm very glad you came on. You have an open invite anytime you want to, come back, and anything new that's particularly tickling your fancy to talk about. Yeah. So anywho, thanks for coming on. Why don't you do a little plug, to everybody where they can find you? We didn't actually really talk about the show at all, and I always forget about that until like the end, where I'm like, oh yeah, tell everybody about your show. I forgot.
All good. If people are still with us, then they're probably more interested, anyways. Than conversation.
Yeah, and just to put it out there before Russ says anything, unless you're new, I have talked about this multiple times. Russ, take it away.
Yeah, obviously I talked heavily about music during the conversation, and we do a music podcast. It's Infectious Grooves Podcast, and without going on and on and on. As I mentioned during the conversation, we try hard to keep things positive, which means that if there's an artist or an album or a song that we don't like, we just don't talk about it because it's probably a favorite of someone else's or, important to someone else. And so I don't have any part of me that takes any joy in crapping on things other people love. So you will never hear an episode of our show that is the most overrated albums of the 90s or the most overrated singer ever or anything like that. We talk about underrated. We talk about things we think more people should hear. And the extremely short version is if you go to infectiousgroovepodcast.com, you can find out where to subscribe to us. Or if you're listening to this show right now, you can just search for Infectious Groove Podcast and you'll find us and hit subscribe. And we have a new podcast episode every Monday. And our YouTube channel is completely different content from the podcast. And we actually put out 3 videos every week between 5 and 10 minutes apiece. So they're very short form. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Same idea as the show. Like I said, this weekend I'm shooting a video about 5 Prince songs that most people probably haven't heard. And that's what we try and do with the channel is just here's some quick sound bites about 5 Alice in Chains songs or 5 jazz songs or 5 90s albums that didn't get enough love or whatever, and just quick stuff, trying to keep it positive again. And so I understand that we could get 30, 40,000 views on a video by going, these 5 90s albums are overrated, and then put Alanis Morissette in the thumbnail. So everybody clicks on it and gets all mad. But I take no joy in that. Instead of that, I would rather talk about things more people should hear, or if you like this, check that out. And that's what we do. And so if you like me, you might like my co-hosts. I'm not sure. So I'm still on the fence about them myself, but we do have my best friend in the whole wide world. Michelle is one of my co-hosts, and her life mate, Kyle, is our other co-host on the show. And so it's cool. You get 3 totally unique perspectives on all things music, and that's what we do.
Yep. And like I said, I listen. I hate the term religiously, but I listen every Monday. I look forward to it. It's the best part of my Mondays. Just to start the week off with some positivity. So I have not that, like I said, unless you're new, you already know these guys have my wholehearted endorsement. I really think you should be listening to them. So yeah, listen. It's good stuff.
Right on.
Go through the back catalog. There's some great stuff back there. Actually, I think the first episode I listened to was when you guys were doing. It was like one of the tournaments.
I was just going to say that I think the hidden gem in our back catalog, and I'm very proud of a lot of the content we've put out. But if you go back to season 1 and you listen to that album tournament that we did, it is. If you earlier in this conversation, I referenced being completely dumbfounded, and I won't give it away. But if you listen to the episode involving Pet Sounds by Beach Boys, you will hear the full extent of me being unable to understand someone else's perspective.
Yeah. Well, I got to be honest. That was kind of where I was like, you know what? I like this guy because I was right there with you going, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And like
to this day, I don't understand it. I don't.
I've tried, and it's funny too because this is like, it's not like world changing or anything like that, but this is one of those moments. I remember exactly where I was when I heard that statement, and I was sitting in my living room. I was playing video games. I was playing a video game, and I had my PlayStation controller, and I was playing, and I had my phone sitting on the couch next to me, and I was listening to the show, and I literally just went, what? And like stopped what I was doing, which I was playing an online game with like 6 other people. So it was like everybody else, what are you doing? What are you doing? I got to rewind. Hang on. I didn't just hear this. And I completely stopped what I was doing to rewind the episode just to go, no. Yeah.
Like I said, we have YouTube content that's it's totally different than the podcast itself, but that particular moment is one of the few times I wish we ran video on the show, because if you think it sounds good, you should have seen I was like clenched fist over that.
I can only imagine that. But yeah, so I guess we'll button this up.
Right on.
Russ, thank you again so much for making time out of your day to come over and talk to me. But anyway, so I guess for now, that's what we had to say. Thanks for listening to another episode of I Had to Say It. If you liked what you heard, leave a review, give us a follow, give me some feedback. And if you didn't like what you heard, leave a review, give me a follow, give me some feedback. I'll try and fix it. Check us out on all the social media platforms at I Had to Say It Podcast is the trigger for all that stuff, for the search term. And if you want, check out the website, www.ihadtosayitpodcast.com. There's links to people that have been involved with the program, things I've talked about. There are some links available for some merch that we're working on, and there are ways to contact us there as well. And thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.